Before we begin, a word of caution to our viewers. What you're about to hear might rattle your sense of truth, not because it's conspiratorial or sensational, but because so much of it has been hiding in plain sight. Here on Dark Sides, we don't deal in theatrics. We don't give you prepackaged headlines. We step into the shadows and ask you to walk with us. If you find yourself asking hard questions by the end of this video, if you're uncomfortable, unsettled, or even just intrigued, then do something about it. Speak up in the comments. Subscribe. Give this story a signal boost. Let us know, because silence is complicity and the powerful count on that. Now, whether you think he's being sarcastic or genuine, the point stands: why would someone be in prison for a crime that Trump keeps dismissing as fiction? Maybe, if you want him to be generous, he means the parts that connect him to Epstein. But when he calls the whole scandal a hoax, it sounds like he's dismissing everything. The victims, the investigations, the evidence, all of it. Which opens the door for people like Musk to sarcastically post things like, "It's a cover-up," the kind of thing that raises eyebrows if it's connected to Epstein. Deflection. It wasn't. Before we begin, a word of caution to our viewers. What you're about to hear might rattle your sense of truth, not because it's conspiratorial or sensational, but because so much of it has been hiding in plain sight. Here on Dark Sides, we don't deal in theatrics. We don't give you prepackaged headlines. We step into the shadows and ask you to walk with us. If you find yourself asking hard questions by the end of this video, if you're uncomfortable, unsettled, or even just intrigued, then do something about it. Speak up in the comments. Subscribe. Give this story a signal boost. Let us know, because silence is complicity and the powerful count on that. Now, whether you think he's being sarcastic or genuine, the point stands: why would someone be in prison for a crime that Trump keeps dismissing as fiction? Maybe, if you want him to be generous, he means the parts that connect him to Epstein. But when he calls the whole scandal a hoax, it sounds like he's dismissing everything. The victims, the investigations, the evidence, all of it. Which opens the door for people like Musk to sarcastically post things like, "It's a cover-up," the kind of thing that raises eyebrows if it's connected to Epstein. Deflection. It wasn't some innocent doodle. The whole thing reads like two men sharing a dirty secret in a tone that laughs in the face of accountability. Obviously, it's not a hoax. Alright, let's get into it. Influencers and right-wing accounts were rattled, and then suddenly, almost as if coordinated, they flipped. And every adult who flew with them. The answer: a blunt yes. Whether Grok is correct or not is beside the point. The fact that Musk is even asking these questions in public, tagging prominent accounts and getting millions of impressions is what matters. Why dig up an intel report from 2016 unless you're trying to distract from something else? That report never claimed that Russia changed votes. It said they tried to penetrate voter databases, mostly unsuccessfully. Don't show this to the Wall Street Journal, she jokes. But no one's claiming Trump is a trafficker because he made a sketch. The concern is about context. We're still watching political tribes twist themselves into knots trying to defend the indefensible. It's about that letter, that relationship, and what we now know Epstein was doing years before he was ever arrested. And Democrats at the time were clear: Russia's actions didn't flip the election, but the attempt was serious and concerning. They pivoted hard, attacking the Wall Street Journal for even reporting the story, and somehow walk away untouched. And we're still stuck with a justice system that hasn't held a single one of Epstein's high-profile clients accountable, not even for show. Sit with that feeling, and then do something with it. But it did its job. It got people yelling about Obama again instead of asking who was on Epstein's flight logs. That's on record. And if you're one of the many who feels like the official story has too many holes, maybe you belong here with us after all. Maybe this is a fundamental verdict on American justice. Not because they care about hypocrisy, but because this is something they can't spin fake. They shouted, "Trump doesn't even write like that." But let's ask a question. How would they know? Musk is no stranger to controversy. Entire paragraphs filled with strange metaphors and compliments. The reports that sit on shelves gathering dust. And remember, people in power don't fear exposure. They fear accountability. Just a handwritten note and years of documented friendship. Because the Epstein connection is the one thing that genuinely shakes Trump's base. Not because they care about him lying. You either knew Epstein and partied with him, or you didn't. You either wrote that letter, or you didn't. There's no laptop to blame. Look into the names we're not allowed to say. The cases that vanish. They fear that enough of us will stop scrolling and start demanding something real. No liberal media bogeyman. So why is it so hard to believe he wrote something poetic or cryptic to Epstein? and then somehow managed to ignore everyone who benefited from it. Just because you haven't received a love letter from him doesn't mean he doesn't send them. Administration after administration. Investigative journalism and, he's right, independent research, testimonies, civil lawsuits, and still zero criminal convictions for any of Epstein's clients. And Epstein replies, yes, but I won't tell you what it is. Then Trump writes back again, we have certain things in common. Enigmas never age. A pal is a wonderful thing, it's unsettling. Not one. The justice system found a man running an international sex trafficking operation, imprisoned him. But this time, his post read more like a digital investigation than a rant. He responds to a right-wing account asking whether he thinks anyone will be held accountable. Musk answers, I sure hope so. This is a fundamental verdict on justice in America. This wasn't some harmless or SVP. It read like a cryptic, veiled confession. In it, Trump writes things like, there must be more to life than having everything. But that barely captures how strange and feverish the night became. They knew each other. They understood each other. And that's not speculation, that's NewsDecoded is. But the verdict isn't looking too promising. Elon Musk is back in the mess, this time diving headfirst into the murky waters of the Epstein story again. And it's not just a few posts here and there. It's a full-on, late-night tirade that's spilled over into attacks on Donald Trump, questions about federal records, and a heavy dose of sarcasm about the entire American justice system. And no one has a good answer. The more attention Musk and others bring to the issue, the more impossible it becomes to ignore that Donald Trump was very much in Epstein's circle and, not just in a vague, high society way, now finds itself in a tough position. A sketch with specific details. The headline from the Daily Beast read, Musk goes nuclear on Trump's Epstein crisis with all-night posting meltdown. Not subtle. You might have seen already a video clip that went viral, showing Trump literally scurrying away from a swarm of shouted questions about Epstein. He had just made another one of his strange, fawning statements, what some have started calling his love letter to Epstein, written back in 2003. And then, he ran. The reporters shout, Mr. President, Mr. President, and all you get in response is silence and the sight of his back. This wasn't just a moment, it was a spark. Musk, apparently watching in real time like the rest of us, exploded online. At one point, Musk asked, why is Ghislaine Maxwell in federal prison for a hoax? That's what Trump's been doing lately, repeating that the entire Epstein thing is a hoax. This is where things start getting even more tangled. Years have passed. This is what Musk was hammering all night. He reposts that infamous image of the Epstein case binders, those giant stacks labeled Phase 1, and asks the same question a lot of people have been asking for years now. Where's Phase 2? The MAGA world wants content to ignore the Epstein scandal unless it could be weaponized against Democrats. Trump once sent Epstein a handwritten letter for his 50th birthday album. Trump even drew a woman in the album. And yet, after this was exposed, what did we get? Trump supporters, even the die-hard ones, started turning on him for a moment. Just a moment. He wrote love letters to Kim Jong-un. It's also worth asking, why did this sudden surge of defense happen right after the story broke? And when Elon starts posting about the government's possession of flight records, visitor logs, and allegedly the full Epstein client list, things start to look even worse. He even queries his own AI chatbot, Grok, asking whether the government has digital records of every unaccompanied minor who visited Epstein's island, because it's pushing this story back into the light, and that scares people. Suddenly, there's a diversion. Tulsi Gabbard posts a statement claiming that the Obama administration committed treason by covering up Russian interference in the 2016 election. Why now? So Tulsi's statement falls flat. And just to add to the circus, a Republican congresswoman posted a digital sketch of a woman with exaggerated features, mocking the idea that sketching a woman is somehow incriminating. So where does this leave us? We're still in a country where powerful men write cryptic birthday notes to pedophiles. So maybe Musk is right, and maybe it's not a verdict at all. Maybe it's a mirror. And if you're staring into that mirror right now, and wondering how we got here, that's the right question. But don't stop there. Ask more. Push deeper. So if this story made you uncomfortable, good. Stick around with us here on Dark Sides. Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read them. Subscribe if you haven't. You're watching NewsDecoded, and this is the Dark Side. Before we begin, a word of caution to our viewers.
If you're the kind of person who wants answers, real answers, on stories that powerful people hope you all forget, you're in the right place. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, drop a comment with your thoughts, and give this video a like if you think this kind of reporting matters. This is News Decoded, and you're watching Dark Sides. The story around Jeffrey Epstein isn't going away. Not quietly, not quickly, and definitely not without dragging a few more people into the light. Right now, the pressure on Congress is growing, not just from one party but from both sides of the aisle. There is a bipartisan move underway in the House to demand the full release of every single Epstein file still held by federal agencies. And some of them are among the most vocal defenders of the president. The legislative process requires a 7-day waiting period after a bill is introduced. The 10 Republican co-sponsors have remained solid, even after the president's comments about grand jury documents. And Kana is confident they'll gain more Republican allies before the vote is called. Speaker Mike Johnson seems to be aware of that clock ticking, and, interestingly, he might try to adjourn Congress early to avoid the vote. She pointed to other legislative issues, like funding for global health and anti-poverty programs, as more urgent. But Kana pushed back hard. To him, this isn't a distraction at all. It's one of the most vital transparency efforts of our time. And if it does, the Epstein files could be cracked open for the first time in a way we haven't seen before. When you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, Lauren Boebert, and Tim Burchett all backing transparency on Epstein, and just hours later, the president himself filed a sweeping libel lawsuit. The president is furious. He called the allegation absurd and told House leaders that he has never drawn anything like that in his life. But he insists that it's completely different, and that the so-called Epstein drawing simply doesn't exist. The targets? The Wall Street Journal, its parent company, and Rupert Murdoch personally. It challenges the claim that Trump and Epstein were ever friends, even though there are multiple photos and video clips of the two together before their relationship reportedly soured. Something unusual is happening. This is a rare political moment where anti-establishment energy from the left and the right are converging. That's billion with a B. He posted on his social platform saying he hopes Murdoch and his friends are ready for the depositions and legal grilling to come. He said the media thought they'd finally bring Trump down with the drawing story, but instead, Trump went on offense and turned the narrative around. One of them, Representative Thomas Massie, posted a blunt message that reflects the growing tension. Folks, keep the pressure up. In its court filing, the DOJ openly cited public pressure as the reason. The quote reads, "Given the public interest, the Department of Justice moves the court to unseal the underlying grand jury transcripts." Not just a newspaper, but its billionaire owner, Rupert Murdoch. This is the same Rupert Murdoch the president praised in the Oval Office not that long ago. Now the relationship has fully ruptured, subject to appropriate redaction of victim-related and other personal identifying information. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave your thoughts in the comments. What happens next in this story may depend on how loud people like you are willing to be. On one side, you have a president using the courts to try to control the narrative around Epstein. On the other, you have a bipartisan group in Congress trying to tear the curtain down. And somewhere in the middle sits the Justice Department, walking a tightrope between legal caution and public demand. But now with this lawsuit and the grand jury moves, we're seeing some of those voices flip. Instead of attacking, they're defending him. They know the country wants answers, and they know stonewalling isn't going to fly much longer. Instead of demanding answers, they're blaming Murdoch and the media for trying to smear him. And critics argue that the real treasure trove of information lies not in court-sealed testimony, but in the DOJ's own files, emails, text messages, interview transcripts, all of which they have the authority to release without any court order at all. It's working, but we want all the files. The leading Democrat behind this push is California Congressman Ro Khanna, who said that, while the administration is responding to public pressure, what's being offered isn't nearly enough, and that effort is gaining serious traction, and when that happens, everything from private communications to past associations could be fair game. If people believe the government is protecting billionaires and political insiders at the expense of justice, Kana admits that Democrats didn't introduce this kind of legislation over the last 4 years, and part of the reason, ironically, is because Donald Trump himself raised the stakes. He said he'd release the Epstein files. He promised transparency. Now his failure to do so is being used as fuel to finally get it done. Faith in the entire system crumbles. This is about rooting out corruption that's gone unchecked for far too long. 10 Republican co-sponsors are already on board. Yes, it is true. The White House is preparing to release parts of the grand jury testimony that it legally can. But according to Kana, that's not where the real secrets are buried. Those transcripts mostly cover Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They don't get into the rich and powerful men, the politicians, business leaders, and celebrities who were allegedly involved in crimes or cover-ups. That's where the public interest truly lies. There's another angle that matters just as much. A significant portion of the material, texts, interview notes, internal communications, isn't protected by court orders. It could be released at the Justice Department's discretion, and so far they've chosen not to. Congress is responding. Kana says there's a plan to force a vote in September, maybe even earlier, but when lawmakers return, Kana says they'll be ready. All 212 Democrats are expected to support the bill. So yes, it's very possible that a forced vote will happen in the fall. But not everyone sees this as a priority. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighed in recently, calling the entire situation a distraction. He made 3 points. First, it's strategic. This legislation is dividing Trump's MAGA base, something almost no other issue has managed to do. Second, it's about public trust. And third, it's about timing. And yet, at the same time that Congress is pushing for transparency, the president himself is taking an extraordinary step in the opposite direction. Tonight, his Department of Justice is asking a judge for permission to release some of the Epstein-related information, but definitely not all of it. The lawsuit is over a report that claimed the president wrote a crude birthday message to Epstein over 2 decades ago, something that allegedly included a graphic drawing of a naked woman. Interestingly, though, there is a sketch he made of the New York City skyline back in 2005 that sold for $30,000 at auction in 2017. The lawsuit doesn't stop with the drawing. What makes this even more remarkable is that the president is asking for at least $10 billion in damages. Legal experts say this lawsuit could backfire. Why? Because if the case proceeds, the president himself would likely have to sit for a deposition. Despite the risk, this lawsuit may be serving a different kind of goal, rallying the base. Just a few weeks ago, prominent right-wing figures were hammering the president over his handling of the Epstein files. One influential podcaster called it a kill shot attempt gone wrong. This entire legal firestorm comes at a moment when the Department of Justice is also seeking to unseal parts of the grand jury materials in the Epstein case. Translation: the DOJ knows people are watching. Still, this step from the DOJ is limited. Redactions will be heavy, and let's not forget who the president is suing here. This moment marks a clear turning point. The real question is simple. How much longer can this be kept in the dark? Thanks for watching Dark Sides on NewsDecoded. If you're someone who thinks truth should come before politics, before wealth, before influence,
Presents Dark Corners, Melania's American Fantasy, a closer look at the First Lady's past. Welcome back to another late-night descent into Dark Corners, where we peel back the glossy surface and expose what lies beneath. Tonight, we're lifting the curtain on a story that floats somewhere between glamour and controversy, mystery and media manipulation. This is Dark Corners, and this one's called Melania's American Fantasy. It's a tale spun through photo shoots, velvet ropes, political alliances, and a trail of questions that refuses to go away. This is not just a story about a former First Lady. The chapter she shared, How I Met Donald, and while it might seem like a benign recollection, part romance, part nostalgia, it reopens old wounds and new questions about who Melania really is, and what role she played in the shadows of her husband's secrets. And more importantly, why she might be trying to monetize it now, approached her. We Ray talking about the mid to late 90s, when Epstein's behavior was already being whispered about behind elite doors. According to reports, Ghislaine Maxwell, who would later be convicted for her role in Epstein's trafficking operations, was already making introductions for Epstein's inner circle. In a 1997 London Sunday Mirror article, Maxwell was even referred to as Madam Maxwell, and she was said to have brought young, beautiful women to Trump and other businessmen, introduced himself, and the rest, she claims, is history. Exhausted and jet-lagged, she reluctantly agreed to attend a party at the Kit Kat Club. Her words painted a dreamy image, a sleek limo, the glamour of Fashion Week, mingling with designers and photographers. Yet somehow, Melania, little-known model with no major accolades, was granted this visa in 2001. Immigration experts at the time called it highly unusual. Her own lawyers were inconsistent in their explanations. One said she received it through marriage and illegal immigration. Melania brought her own parents to the U.S. through the very system he claimed to oppose. A press conference was promised to explain her immigration journey. It never happened. Another claimed it was based on extraordinary talent. No evidence was ever released to confirm either. That comes with responsibility. But CBS News later debunked that claim. When confronted, her site was quickly taken down, and Melania issued a vague statement, saying the website no longer reflected her current professional interests, especially when government accountability is absent. When real people are grieving, when political figures do more posting than problem solving. But the questions haven't stopped. They've only grown louder. She reportedly demanded $150,000 from CNN for an interview. Her official speeches, including her 2016 RNC speech, plagiarized entire lines from Michelle Obama. But the truth? There's no public record of her earning a degree. And if Melania wants to keep posting chapters, we'll keep reading between the lines. But when Melania herself reopens the story, when she publishes her narrative in a chapter that glosses over all the uncomfortable details, she invites scrutiny. And if she's profiting from this version of events, the least we can do is examine it for what it is. We just launched, and we need you, because in the darkest corners, there's always a story waiting to be told. While the sentiment seems heartfelt, critics questioned why remembrance needed to come with a price tag. Hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and help us build a community of people who care about what's really going on behind the scenes. But to those familiar with the Kit Kat Club's history, this wasn't the Met Gala. It was a recruiting ground, a meeting place, one that might be less about dreams and more about deception. One of the tokens tied to her branding lost nearly all of its value after launch. And while that might just seem like another celebrity hustle gone wrong, it reflects a pattern. Monetizing the presidency, monetizing tragedy, monetizing the myth. And that night, one of the powerful men in attendance was Donald Trump, accompanied by another woman. This is a story about truth, immigration, privilege, and an empire that may have been built on illusion. And this episode, friends, is a long one because some truths can't be contained in a soundbite. According to an Associated Press investigation, she may have been paid for modeling jobs in 1996 while on a visa that didn't legally allow her to earn money in the U.S. This would mean she violated immigration law, something her husband has famously criticized others for. So let's begin, not with a fairy tale, but with an Instagram post. Not long ago, Melania Trump posted a snippet from her self-titled autobiography, Melania. Let's start with the scene. 1998, Manhattan. The Kit Kat Club. A venue known less for its sophistication and more for its exclusive but sleazy gatherings, where wealthy Manhattan men mingled with young Eastern European models. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find champagne flowing and photographers snapping, but also the kind of place that raised eyebrows among those who knew what really went on behind closed doors. According to Melania's own account, she was invited by a friend after returning from Paris. He saw Melania, but what history? Because around that same time, Donald Trump was getting very cozy with Jeffrey Epstein. Now let's pivot back to Melania. While Melania's story might seem like a romantic account of two ships meeting in a New York night, a deeper dive into her past, her modeling career, her immigration path, and her educational claims reveals a different picture. Let's talk about that education claim. Back in 2016, During Donald Trump's first campaign for president, Melania's official website claimed she had earned a degree in design and architecture from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. In fact, this supposedly minor fib echoes the larger theme, constructing an identity for public consumption. Even more unsettling are questions surrounding Melania's immigration status. And let's not forget the infamous Einstein visa. The EB-1 visa is meant for individuals of extraordinary ability. Think Nobel Prize winners, Olympic medalists, breakthrough scientists. Let's not pretend this doesn't matter. At a time when her husband was crusading against chain migration now, some would say it's old news. And that brings us to her alleged grifting. Reports show that Melania earned high-dollar fees from Trump PACs. Her stylists and makeup artists were paid tens of thousands a month. And if you're thinking, well, maybe she just didn't know, remember, this is someone who was granted an Einstein visa for supposed excellence in her field. She also tried to launch her own cryptocurrency and NFT projects, many of which tanked in value. In one of her recent posts, she promoted a Forever Love bracelet collection, supposedly in memory of children lost in tragic events. Let's be real. When tragedy is turned into a product catalog, it doesn't sit right. And in the background of it all is a woman who walked into the Kit Kat Club and walked out of history of First Lady. So maybe this isn't just a love story. Maybe it's not just a tabloid curiosity. Maybe it's a dark corner of modern American power, a place where immigration, image, influence, and truth intersect in messy, manipulated ways. This has been Dark Corners, brought to you by Daily News AI. Before we go, if you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of truth seeker we're building this channel for. Subscribe to Daily News AI now. We'll be back with more deep dives into the uncomfortable truths the mainstream doesn't want to touch. Subscribe, like, comment, and stay tuned. This is Dark Corners, only on Daily News AI. Checked.
You ever feel like something's just off? Like behind all the headlines, the scandals, the half-baked press conferences, there's a rot nobody wants to talk about. Welcome to NewsDecoded, and tonight we're diving into one of the darkest rabbit holes out there. Yeah, we call this corner of the internet Dark Corners, and by the time we're done, you'll see exactly why. One of the many underage girls who accused Giuffre Epstein of sex trafficking, what a lot of people don't realise. Virginia worked at Mar-a-Lago. She was 17, handing out towels by the pool when Epstein found her. Yeah, that's where it started. She later ended up in Australia and reportedly died by suicide. Another name. Another silence. So let's talk about Ivana Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump's first wife. She's dead. Buried. In the backyard of one of Trump's golf courses in Bedminster, New Jersey. In a back lot. The story? She supposedly fell down a flight of stairs. That's it. No cameras, no details, just boom. Dead. Buried next to the 9th hole. And Trump? He's out here calling it the Epstein hoax. That's what he posted last Sunday. Poll numbers have gone up since the Epstein hoax was exposed, he writes. Calls it a Democratic smear campaign. Says he's at 90%, 92%, 95% approval in Republican polls. Because your name's in the mix. What does that say about you? Now, let's talk about Virginia Giuffre, formerly Virginia Roberts. Underage models being abused, exploited, passed around like currency. And the thing is, no one stopped it. No one blew the whistle. Their trauma wiped away by a guy with a gold toilet who says it's all fake. They all just moved on. Business as usual, for everyone else connected to that trafficking ring to walk free. And you know what gets left behind? Justice. Justice gets buried, just like Ivana. Trump's dark past isn't just some tabloid drama. It's got layers. We know Epstein trafficked minors while hanging out with Trump. That's fact. It's documented. They were close. Trump once said, "Giuffre likes beautiful women, on the younger side." That's not a throwaway quote. That's an admission. They turn to Fox News and scream, blockbuster scandal. But the scandal is Trump himself. The lies, the crimes, the abuse. Manufactured documents, they say. Data manipulation. Anything to shift the spotlight away from the man at the centre. Trump. And guess what? They did. Emails got leaked. It was all right there in front of us. Then we get to John Casablancas. That name ring a bell? It should. Undermining NATO, blocking weapons, mocking his own allies. It's not a hoax, it's not fake news. It's happening in plain sight. Let's just say the walls were closing in fast. While he rants about polling numbers and cries fake news, his own house is burning down. It only went up 0.1%. That's easy to say when you're rich. Try buying eggs on minimum wage and then tell me it's no big deal. He had connections to billionaires, politicians, royalty. And yeah, Donald Trump was on the guest list. Multiple times. So were others. The only thing sticking is the stench of desperation. Fox trotted out Tulsi Gabbard, Pam Bondi, and some guy named Kash Patel. Dude, are you serious? People are struggling with rent, with inflation, and your focus is on renaming sports teams. Smash the like, drop a comment. We want to hear your thoughts, your theories, your fire. They're claiming Obama set Trump up. It's all one big conspiracy. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall hoping something sticks, especially when the darkness tries to drown us out. Stay sharp, stay aware, stay loud. But tonight isn't he about who was on the flight logs. It's about the pattern. What does that even mean? That sentence makes 0 sense, just like the rest of his policies. 6 months isn't long enough to fix a nation, but it's long enough to ruin one. And Trump's track record? Total demolition. He promised to end both in 24 hours, but here we are, worse off. He's even helping Netanyahu move people from Gaza to other countries. You hearing this? A place where we don't tiptoe around the truth, where we say what needs to be said, and we say it loud. So if you're down for that... I mean, really? Consequential how? Because it sure as hell ain't because of strong leadership. It's because of chaos, division, and lies. A nation drowning in conspiracy and corruption, while the people in power play make-believe. And how Trump fits into that picture like a missing puzzle piece. He ran elite model management, and he was tight with Trump. Like, tight. They ran beauty pageants together. Real classy stuff, right? Except Casablancas was sleeping with underage girls, cheated on his wife with a 15-year-old. Eventually married a 17-year-old. Real romantic. And yeah, he was another one who died quietly. Elite Model Management, the company. The same one that had partnerships with Trump's businesses. Full of scandals. Giuffre Epstein. Yeah, the big one. He's dead too. Officially a suicide. Unofficially. See, it's not just Epstein, it's the whole web. The lies, the victims, the history. First off, no, you're not. Second, if you're calling child sex trafficking a hoax, just meanwhile, real victims, real people, get dismissed. And when you call it a hoax, you open the door for Ghislaine Maxwell to appeal her case. Now let's back up a second. But Trump wants you to believe none of it matters, that it's all fake. He posted this. Today marks 6 months into my second term, the most consequential 6 months ever. He claims to have ended multiple wars. Which ones? Gaza? Ukraine? Trump said, "We've ended wars not related to us except for trade or friendship. And now the MAGA base is scared. His secrets are coming back to haunt him. So what do? Fox News wants you to believe it's about Obama, or Russia, or the 2016 election. Let's not forget, Trump stood on stage and said, 'Russia, if you're listening, please hack my opponent.' Now he's playing the same game with Ukraine, cozying up to Putin, and he's not alone. But guess what? Trump even brought up the Redskins and the Indians, saying we should change the names back, calls it a clamoring from the great Indian people. Oh, and then there's Howard Lutnick, a billionaire who's out here saying, nobody really cares about inflation. So yeah, this is where we are. Dark times, twisted headlines. But here at NewsDecoded, we don't just decode the headlines, we drag the shadows into the light. And listen, this is the launch of our channel. If you're still watching, you're part of something brand new. Hit that subscribe button. Every voice matters. This has been another dive into the Dark Corners files, only on NewsDecoded. And trust me, we're just getting started. See you in the next one.
Alright folks, welcome back to Dark Angle, the place where we shine a light on the darkest corners of the most powerful people in the world. Today, we're diving into a story that's been buried under layers of glamour, money, and political drama. The story of Donald Trump, underage girls, and a modeling empire that wasn't just about beauty.
It was about power, access, and control. And if you thought Epstein was the only dark chapter in Trump's past, think again. Because today, we're going back to the 90s, to a time when Trump wasn't just building towers, he was building his own private playground, and the girls, they were barely old enough to drive. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash like, drop a comment, and share this with your squad, because this one, it's going to leave you speechless. Alright, let's start with the basics. You know Donald Trump, the guy who once said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still get away with it. Well, turns out he didn't have to shoot anyone. He just had to host a beauty pageant. Back in 1991, Trump was throwing one of his glamorous, over-the-top events, a beauty pageant called Look of the Year. Now, this wasn't just any pageant. This was run in partnership with John Casablancas, the founder of Elite Model Management. And Casablancas, dude had a very shady reputation. He died in 2013, but before that, he was linked to a lot of disturbing stuff, including affairs with underage girls, and even sexual assault allegations. This guy called underage models women children, yet seriously, that's not a cute nickname. That's a red flag the size of the Empire State Building. Now picture this, it's 1991. A private yacht named the Spirit of New York is cruising near the Statue of Liberty. Older men, some in suits, some balding, some with Trump himself, on board. A bunch of teenage girls, some as young as 14 years old, in miniskirts, evening dresses, barely anything. And Trump would sit there, look them up and down, and decide if they make it to the next round, dancing. Trump didn't just do this once. He did this a lot, touching, pressing up against these girls, surrounding them, they're naked, half-dressed, whatever, and it's part of the job. And what were they doing? One guy even wrapped his arms around two underage models and smiled for the camera, like it was a normal Friday night. Trump was there. He wasn't just watching, he was judging, literally. These girls would walk into a room, in bathing suits. Sounds creepy. It is creepy, but guess what? He even bragged about it on Howard Stern. He said, "As the owner of the pageant, I can walk backstage and inspect the girls." He called it inspecting. The rest of us call it inappropriate, creepy, and borderline illegal. And it's not just Trump-esque words we have to go by. It's the girls themselves. Miss North Carolina 2006 came forward and said she felt very dirty when Trump walked up and down the line of contestants, checking them out like meat at a butcher shop. You're running a beauty pageant or a weight loss boot camp. Miss Arizona 2001. She said Trump walked into the dressing room when girls were changing, topless, naked, completely vulnerable, and no one could say anything. Why? Because he owned the pageant. He had all the power, and no one could do a damn thing about it. Let's not forget Alicia Machado, Miss Universe 1996. Trump publicly called her Miss Piggy because she gained a little weight. He humiliated her on national TV, and when she tried to defend herself, he kept laughing about it. Trump, this is the same guy who said, "Some people when they have pressure don't eat. Some people eat too much, like me," and even admitted he watched her infamous sex tape, which her wife showed him. Like what? And if that's not bad enough, Trump was buddies with John Casablancas for 4 years. They worked together. They partied together. Casablancas married a 17-year-old girl from one of these pageants, and Trump, he was cool with it. And he used that power in ways that were inappropriate, humiliating, and in some cases, possibly illegal. In fact, Trump even said in interviews that he was friends with Casablancas and respected him as a businessman. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that was the 90s, people were different back then, but wait for this, in 2016, during the presidential election, Trump's past came back to haunt him. Audio surfaced of him bragging about grabbing women by their genitals, and people were shocked. But if you look back at his history with these beauty pageants, it wasn't a surprise at all. It was just the tip of the iceberg. But how deep does it go? And get this, Trump even talked about Lindsay Lohan on Stern when she was like 17 or 18. He said she was hot, and joked about how deeply troubled women are great in bed. And when it came to Paris Hilton, whom he knew since she was 12 years old, he said she was flawless. Yeah, that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. So what's the takeaway here? Trump wasn't just some businessman who got into politics. He built an empire that gave him access to young, vulnerable women, the Epstein-level evil. Maybe not, but he definitely played in the same playground. And now, with the release of the Epstein files and more people digging into Trump's past, this isn't just a story from the 90s. It's a story that's still relevant today. Let's go deeper. You might be thinking, okay, Trump had a weird relationship with beauty pageants. Well, let me tell you, it goes deeper than you think. First, let's talk about how these pageants were structured. They weren't just competitions. They were full weekends of events, dinners, after parties, VIP meet and greets, and private gatherings. Girls as young as 14 were expected to attend all of them. And guess who was usually there? Trump and his friends. These weren't just random guys off the street. We're talking about powerful men, businessmen, politicians, and even celebrities. And these girls, they were told this was part of the experience, that they needed to be professional, that they needed to network, but in reality, it was a system designed to exploit. And the worst part, there was no accountability. If a girl said something, she was labeled difficult. If she complained, she was told to move on, and if she tried to speak out publicly, she was silenced, with money, threats, or both. Let's also not forget that Trump used to own Miss USA, Miss Universe, and Miss Teen USA for almost 2 decades. That means for 20 years, he had full control over these pageants, who got in, who got backstage, who got judged, and who got attention, and he used that power to his advantage. In fact, one of the things that shocked people the most was when Trump admitted, on audio, that he used to walk backstage while girls were getting dressed. He said it was part of his job. He called it inspection. But what kind of inspection requires you to walk into a female dressing room filled with half-naked teenage girls? And again, this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a pattern. And the pattern was clear. Power, like we were there to be looked at, not to be respected. Access, control, you couldn't speak up. If you did, you'd be blacklisted, and the girls, they were just pawns in a game. They didn't even know they were playing. Back in 2020, The Guardian published a detailed report on the Elite Look of the Year competition, the same one Trump was involved in. They interviewed former contestants, industry insiders, and even some of the staff who worked at the events. And what they found was shocking. I go backstage before a show and everyone's getting dressed and ready. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant. Therefore, I'm inspecting. I want to make sure everything is good. Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? And you see these incredible looking women, and so I sort of get away with things. They uncovered allegations of sexual harassment, exploitation, inappropriate relationships with underage models, and in some cases, rape. The report described a culture where young girls aged 14 to 18 were exposed to older men in powerful positions, often at events where alcohol was served to minors, and no one was watching. And guess who was at the center of it all? Trump and Casablancas. One former contestant said, "It felt like we were being treated like objects." Another one said, "You couldn't say no." And the worst part, no one was held accountable. Not then, and not even now. Let's hear it straight from Trump. In 2005, he was on Howard Stern's show, and he said, "As the owner of the pageant, it's your obligation to do that." Now, let me ask you, when was the last time you heard of a male pageant owner walking into a female dressing room unannounced? Exactly. It's not normal. It's not okay. And yet, Trump said it like it was just part of the job. All right. What did you think about this one? Was this your first time hearing about Trump's connection with Casablancas? Or were you already familiar with the shady side of his beauty pageant days? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. And if you found this video interesting, hit that subscribe button, smash like, and share it with someone who needs to see this. We're just getting started with Dark Angle,